to you, Estella.
Thank you so much, Maria and Adria. I appreciate the teamwork, as I always say. Hopefully, I everyone can hear me fine. If you have any trouble hearing me, go ahead and give me a message in the chat. I'm going to look at that real quick. And so I want to start off with thanking you for participating and giving your full participation in this facilitated online course, Motivation and Persistence for Adult Learners. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the agenda. So we've got a lot of material to cover in our time together. So this is our agenda. So I want to thank you, and it's great to meet you virtually. I've been reading some of your get to know you posts in the Moodle, and it's always fun to learn things that we all have in common, right? So today we're going to this is what we're talking about today and over the next few weeks. So today the focus will be the strategies for building student self-efficacy. And that would be their personal sense of what they are capable of doing and what we set them to do in our classes. So first, we'll talk about self-efficacy, what it is, and how do we build it. And next, we'll talk about some strategies you can use with your students to help them develop their first efficacy. And then finally, we'll take a look at what's ahead before we wrap up. So that's for today. Now, going forward, if we look at the overview of the course and the focus of the course, so week one, in this course altogether, we'll focus on familiarizing you with the 9 strategies for increasing student motivation and persistence. And whatever the focus, however, the focus will be on what you as a teacher can do in your classroom rather than what the students need to do. This week, we'll have an overview of students of the types of goals, growth mindset, and 9 strategies for increasing motivation and persistence. And today we'll look at those particular strategies for building self-efficacy. Then we'll follow up with students' self-efficacy and learn how to encourage persistence, manage errors. Week 3, we'll investigate how to help your students set goals and explore action research. Sounds exciting, like a Marvel movie. During our second webinar, we'll explore the rest of the strategies and begin to work on action research project. And then you'll finish up in week 4, the plan for your action research project and share it with the others and the other participants in the Moodle. So everyone who successfully completes the 4-week session is eligible for a certificate of completion from CalPro. And so that includes your attendance as well as completing all the assignments in the Moodle to receive your the attendance at both live webinars or completing the makeup activity. So you'll be eligible for a certificate of completion for CalPro from CalPro for 14 hours of professional development. And then you can also apply to receive a continuing education certificate from Cal State University. I was going to say Fullerton because that's my neighborhood, but from Sacramento. So Sacramento, Cal State, Sacramento. Okay, so the objectives for today, by the end of today's webinar, you will be able to have a greater understanding of strategies that can help to build your students' efficacy and consequently increase their motivation and persistence in your classes. Today's webinar is one piece that will help us meet that goal. By the end of today's session, you will be able to do the following. Number 1 is distinguish self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. Next, describe at least 2 ways of building the growth mindset in your learners. And then use reframing to help provide supportive feedback for your students. To maximize the usefulness of today's session, we encourage you to both be an active listener and an active participant. We suggest that during the session, you consider how the content that we're learning applies to you. And doing this throughout these trainings will allow you to get the most of the session. So Sounds good. All right. So today's webinar is about student efficacy. We will define it, contrast it with self-confidence and self-esteem, and examine strategies that can be used by you, the teacher, to help build your students' efficacy and consequently boost their motivation and work toward preserving class enrollment beyond week 3 of class. And that's a hint of what's to come. So have you ever noticed, drum roll please, is there a particular point of time when your audience drops in your class? So please comment, chat, or come off mute so that you can share your thoughts. Is there a particular point in time when your students start to drop from your classes? You can go ahead and say, besides yes, at what point you notice. Okay, so far we see week 4. Anyone else? They get deep in the weeds in the textbook. Okay, during the breaks, right before the holidays, particularly the winter holidays. Yes, this is all relevant. Every one of these. So, a study in England, in Britain, called "Curbing Adult Student Attrition Attendance by Adult Learners" was steady about 70% for the first 3 weeks. And then drops to, drumroll please, 57% by the 9th week. So for many classes, that's well into the term, as you mentioned, and or at least halfway through a semester, right? And is this similar to what happens in your classes? So what this suggests is that we need to engage our learners in the first 3 weeks. So that's the critical point for our students. So if you reflect on, I see G Fade mentioned 2/3 into the semester. And so if you were to look at your numbers, and and some others mentioned during the breaks, right before the holidays and things like that, like at what point, and you don't have to mention this to me now, but like at what point is that in the term relative, to the beginning and the end? So these are good points. All right, so let's take a look at a definition of self-efficacy. So our focus today is on self-efficacy, the confidence that a person feels in their ability to succeed in a certain area, such as becoming more literate. Self-efficacy also refers to the belief that a person has the capability to organize and to take action in specific situations, and it influences how they think, feel, motivate themselves, and act. So when students are feeling more confident and say, I can do this, right? That has a positive effect on the programs and their outcomes. Therefore, we want to support that self-efficacy, which may have been damaged in previous educational and life experiences. And I think that if we were to think a little bit, we would know what I'm talking about. Our students come from many different backgrounds and life experiences, right? All right, so let's look at the difference and between self-esteem, self-efficacy, and self-confidence. So while these terms are sometimes used interchangeably, they do differ when we discuss them in the context of adult students' motivation. So the difference between self-esteem and self-efficacy is that self-esteem is more global, as in, I feel good about myself in general. Self-efficacy, however, relates to the task at hand, like reading or learning to read or doing a certain type of math program or math problem, sorry. It might feel like I might feel great about myself in general, but I'm pretty sure on the basis of my experience, I will never be a good reader, right? And that might be something that's going on, or I'll never be good at math, or that I might feel not so good about myself in general, but I believe I can become a better reader, and so I'm more determined to do it. So as these examples illustrate, a student can have one, self-esteem or self-efficacy, and not the other. So we want them to have both, right? So, what is the difference between self efficacy and self confidence? So, self confidence is also thinking about oneself in a more global sense, such as I can handle whatever comes up. Self efficacy is related to confidence in a person's ability in a specific area. I can figure out the answer to a math problem if I spend enough time on it, is an example of the self talk, right? As you can see, self efficacy is more related to specific skills or tasks. When we provide instruction and support that helps students succeed at using specific skills or completing academic tasks, we are nurturing their sense of self efficacy. So, self esteem is broad. I feel good about myself in general. Self confidence is also broad. I can handle whatever comes up. Self efficacy is more related to specific skills or tasks. I can master this subject if I just keep working at it. When we provide instruction and support that helps students succeed at using specific skills or completing academic tasks, we are nurturing their sense of self efficacy. So, as you may have already seen these online in the week one section, these are the 9 strategies for supporting and increasing learner motivation, persistence, and success. So, we're going to dive into them now. So, over the next 2 weeks, we will discuss we will begin discussing strategies that will boost students' sense of self-efficacy. Next week online, we will discuss the topic of encouraging collaboration and cooperation as a means for building community connection in the classroom. Today, however, we will discuss the strategy of providing feedback for growth mindset. This week, you've watched or will watch a TED Talk by Dr. Carol Dweck, a professor of psychology at Stanford University, whose research focuses on personality and social and developmental psychology. She is the author of the book entitled Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. Let's take a moment to review how growth mindset and fixed mindset differ. So, in the chat, I'd love for you to give me some behaviors. So, list behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs of people with a fixed mindset. And you can probably come up with some ideas, even if you haven't read the book or seen the content yet in the Moodle. So, list behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs of people with a fixed mindset. So one, Barbara says, I've never been good at math and you won't be able to help me. Oh, that's a good one. I'm not smart enough to do math. I'm no good at this. Funny how it always often comes up with math, right? It's too difficult. I can't read. These are all great. Oh, I get distracted easily. Oh, that's a good one. I'm not changing. Oh, wow. Yeah. Instructions aren't clear. Okay. See the empty half. Huh. Okay, Fatima. Very good. So now let's share in the chat behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs of people with a growth mindset. Let's see. Jeffrey says, I have a blank, fill in the diagnosis, so I flat out can't do it. So that's still in the fixed mindset, yes? So what about growth mindset? Okay, this is good. I don't understand it yet. Tell me what to do and I'll try my best. Great. With practice, I'll get better. Excellent. I don't know this yet, but I can learn. Not yet. Yeah, that's good. Yet is the optimal word. Watch me master this. Okay, Jeffrey. Um, People who have the attitude that they want to learn. Yes, I need to put more effort into this. Okay. Yes, these are awesome. Excellent, excellent. Oh, it's getting better. Okay. Okay, last 3, 2, 1. Any additional last chance? Okay, so as you have seen, people with a growth mindset tend to believe that one's intelligence competencies and abilities can be developed. A student with a growth mindset will have an advantage in boosting his or her self efficacy. People with a fixed mindset may believe that we are born with intelligence, competencies, and abilities that cannot be changed, so they're finite. Students with this mindset might give up if something is too hard. They may prefer not to do something rather than fail. Aw. Um, but with a fixed mindset makes you concerned about how you will be judged. Growth mindset has you concerned with improving. So is mindset permanent? Can it change over time? Is it the same? It is the same or different, sorry, for different areas of our life. So some might say, I have a fixed mind, or may not admit to it, but have a fixed mindset in one area and a growth mindset in another. In a learning setting, is it the same or different for different subjects? So we talked about math in the chat. That's a great example. Some people say they can't do math, where others will say, that same person might say, oh, yeah, I love English or I love writing, you know? It is possible to have different mindsets for different areas of your life, and one can change their mindset. How many of you were already familiar with the growth mindset and work of Carol Dweck? Oh, tech is another one. Oh, okay. Hearts, thumbs up. Excellent. Oh, nope. Okay, good. That's awesome. This is why we're here, is to get some information that we might not have known before, right? Okay, thank you for your honesty and vulnerability. I appreciate that. That's how we grow and learn. Okay, so in the TED Talk in week 1 of the course, Dweck describes the research on growth mindset and how it relates to fairness. How would helping students understand that they are learning and getting smarter through effort and difficulty affect fairness in your school? Let's return to the chat. So, how does mindset relate to students' ideas and about fairness, their understanding of fairness? Thank you so much, Maria, for putting the questions in the chat. So, how does mindset relate to students' ideas and understanding of fairness? Okay, so does anyone want to come off mute to say what they're thinking rather than typing it in chat? Okay, different people have different strengths. Yes. Well, they might simply believe the world is unfair and against them. And so, is that a mindset challenge? Right? So, when we think about, okay, preconceived notion of how things work. Okay, good. Um, I was going to say that those students who have had negative experiences in school and life, that might have them feel like they can't learn, they can't benefit from realizing that our brain can change. We have neuroplasticity, right? So Barbara says, letting students know that we all have different strengths and that we must work together to reach a goal. Okay. But here's the key in all of this, and that is the power of yet. Students who realize that they aren't stuck where they are and that they can make progress. Power of yet. So, how do you think this concept would influence fairness in your school or program? Previous experience takes them out of that realm. Okay. These are good reflections and notices that we can look at as we're moving forward with the concept of the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset and how to help our students with that. So our words have power. In Dweck's TED Talk, she mentions the power of one word. What was that word? Drum roll, please. The word is yet. That one small word can change an expression of fixed mindset into an attitude of growth mindset. I heard someone come off mute. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was
No?
just going to say, within our system, our educational systems, wherever that may be, sometimes we want to, in our zeal to kind of get the concept across, or we might pick, those kind of students with a natural aptitude or affinity for the subject where they grasp it so easily and can kind of demonstrate their prowess, but that can be kind of alienating to the student who's on the edge, who's kind of trying, but it seems a bit of a stretch. And then they see somebody kind of like seemingly effortlessly just like do it, or if it's something else, and then they're kind of like, yeah, that's not me, and they kind of just take
Yeah.
themselves out of it.
Yeah. That's a good reflection too, to make sure that we're including all students, in our conversation. So let's see. In the chat, I see Derek said changing our attitude can affect our outcome. The power of yet is what I tell my students when they start. This is thought. They're just getting their toes wet and not diving off the high dive yet into the deep end, but be kind to themselves and treat themselves with grace. This is all new learning. And Jeffrey says, I think that a change of experience has to reinforce that change of attitude. We have to hold and provide a space where the students can succeed and then build a new attitude toward learning on that experience. This is all very important. Demonstrating patience, yes. Yes, a safe space is for sure the place that we want to create in our classrooms. And I think about our students. I have always called them the beautiful misfits because our students come into adult ed because they left for some reason other types of educational experiences, not just an ESL, but high school diploma, high school equivalency. They fell through the cracks in some way, and so they're overcoming a lot just to walk in the door and enroll in classes, right? So the word is yet, and that is one small word that can change an expression of a fixed mindset into an attitude of a growth mindset. So yes, demonstrating practice and practice with ourselves. Yes, these are good. Very good. So an adult educators, that would be us, might fall into the trap of recognizing and praising students' intelligence or talent. And this is what I think it was Derek, right, was just saying we fall into the trap of recognizing and praising students' intelligence or talent with the good intentions of encouraging and motivating students. However, that kind of praise deals with a student's personal abilities and not with the growth oriented praise, right? We are going to spend a few moments listing some statements that we can use with our students to foster a growth mindset. Remember that instead of praising the person or the product, praise the process and the progress, as Dweck describes it, and what the students face are accomplished through this practice, persistence, good strategies. Knowing that our students may struggle with both external and internal barriers to their success in our classrooms, we always want to encourage them to be both positive, encourage them and also to be positive in our feedback. However, even positive feedback can feed a fixed mindset rather than foster a growth mindset. So, for instance, have you ever said this in your class? That test was easy for you because you're so smart. Yeah, we can use another approach. As Dweck mentions in her book, we can ask students about their work in a way that admires and appreciates their effort and their choices. So, wow, your project is amazing. I think I missed something on this slide, huh? So when we could have said instead of that test was easy for you because you're smart, we can say something like your test score tells me that you studied and put in a lot of effort. Sorry about that. And so we can use another approach, such as Dweck mentions in her book. We can ask students about their work in a way that admires and appreciates their effort and choices. So one way to say it is, wow, your project is amazing. But we could also say, um, excuse me, how can we make a comment about a class project that will boost the students' self-concept or of self-efficacy? So one way could be, your project is impressive. Tell me about how you planned it out and broke up this big task into manageable parts. So surely our intention in the first situation is to flatter and congratulate the student, but the message may be sending to the student doesn't that they don't need to try very hard next time. So instead, your project is impressive, right? Okay, good. Jeffrey says, what did you learn along the way? Excellent. These are beautiful ways. This is a beautiful example of how to encourage that growth mindset. You've come a long way. Excellent. Your test scores tell me that you studied and put in a lot of effort. So yes, these are excellent examples. All right. On the other hand, if a student does poorly on an activity or an assignment, he or she may be asking him or herself, why can't I understand this? Or why can't I write a correct sentence? And then might be asking him or herself accordingly to her belief in his or her belief in static intelligence. For example, it's because I'm dumb. Oh, how sad. This is the kind of negative self-talk that can become internalized, right? Based on their experiences in life. Negative self-talk can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like what? Teachers, we can help students who view perceived failures as negative personal attributes, which affect their self-esteem. We can help them with that. Teachers, we can model ways to reframe such explanations for a mistake or failure and attribute a lack of success to external and controllable reasons or causes. To help a student reframe his explanation of a failure, try asking the student directly what he is thinking about the challenge. And if you get the student to verbalize his thoughts through their self talk, or even if you don't, then suggest alternative things they can say to him or herself. You might even post these on the wall. Hey. So let's discuss how we can help students understand that having a growth mindset means believing that mistakes are learning opportunities. We're going to look at some ways to give feedback when students make mistakes or use negative self-talk. So when students don't do well and begin to use negative self-talk, we can intervene with feedback that uses growth mindset language to reinforce the student's mistakes are part of learning, that we learn when we are challenged, and that success takes time and effort. So, for example, with I got it all wrong, you can counter with mistakes are expected. That's how we learn. Another example, I'll never get better at this. And you can respond with, look at your progress. You have made. Do you remember when? Okay, so I see a comment by Scott. Chills. I heard a TED talk by an inner city teacher who reframed how their students looked at their tests. Instead of getting a score of -8 out of 10, she gave them a +2 grade with a big star and a smiley face. This is challenging, and you are learning. Yes, absolutely. So some other examples include things like when students say, this is too hard for me, we can say, if it were easy, you wouldn't learn. We learn when we are challenged, or when a student says, I'm not good at this, we can ask, what part was difficult? Let's look at it together. Beautiful. All right, so here we're going to do some chat talk. So get ready with your keyboards, everyone. We are now going to do an activity in which you will demonstrate your ability to provide feedback to students on their negative self-talk in order to promote their growth mindset. We are going to look at three quotes that represent fixed mindset statements. In the chat, please write the feedback statement that you would make to your student in order to intervene and direct them to a growth mindset attitude. All right, so practice number one, how might you intervene and reframe to promote a growth mindset? So the student says, I don't belong in this class. I only went to elementary school in my country. I need to start at level one. So how might you intervene and reframe to promote growth mindset? What would you say to the student? That you are here and it seems that you want to increase your knowledge. Thank you, Barbara. Yes. Anyone else? Everyone belongs in this class, and we can do some tutoring to fill in any information you are missing. Thank you, Heather. Yes. Scott says this class is a first level for you. We will get through it together. Yes. Beautiful. Okay, let's talk about the next one. So the student says, my teacher doesn't like me. She always calls on me, even though she knows I don't know the answer. And so a couple of responses to the previous one. We all start somewhere, and you're going to learn this slowly. Nobody learns overnight. Keep consistent. That's good. Okay, so my teacher doesn't like me. She always calls on me, even though she knows I don't know the answer. So how would you reframe that? My teacher doesn't like me. She always calls on me, even though she knows I don't know the answer. Eric says she still believes in you. Your teacher believes in you and wants to help you learn. Someone else may also need the same help. Heather is that's a great one too. Your teacher sees your potential and wants to see you grow. That's from Yvette. Thank you. Scott says she wants you to think through with the class and not hide. She does like you, and that's why she's challenging you. Oh, she knows you can do it. That's Carolina. Jeffrey says, she's giving you a chance to know the answer. Barbara says, I usually tell students that I wouldn't ask you if I didn't think you at least had an idea. There you go. And then George says, I think she wants to show that you can do it. Derek, maybe your teacher sees something special in you and wants to challenge you. Oh, those are awesome. Okay, one more practice. So this test is ridiculous. It's too hard. No one could do it. So how can you reframe this one? This test is ridiculous. It's too hard. No one could do it. So as you can see from these answers so far, we can promote self-efficacy and a positive attitude towards the process of learning, right? Helping students see that learning um, can be done and that they can make mistakes. Okay, so let's see. Heather says, you may just need more practice, but you can do it. Barbara says, tell me how you're feeling. It's usually out of frustration. Eric, it's just letting me know what you need to work on as a class. Hey, that's good. I won't be too hard. It won't be too hard the next time. It's a stepping stone. Yes, you never know until you try. Just do your best. Try your best. Yes. I think about this with the CASAS test. That's often the first thing that our students encounter is they're looking at it thinking they have to get, 100% on it. So, but no, this is just telling us what we need to teach, right? This is a challenging concept for all students. They're not alone. Yeah, very true. Thank you, Daniel. I love it. Thank you for your participation in the chat. This is awesome. All right, so numerous studies have aimed to find a magic number of hours, days, or years that it takes for people to be experts. You might have heard things like the 10,000 hours, 21 days. The Beatles played 8 days a week. um, but while the study found that it took 21 days to develop new habits, another study claimed 10 years and another 20 years, and yet another claimed that it took 10,000 hours to be good at something. These studies have one factor in common, and that is the subjects had given sustained effort through persistent practice and we can provide students with this valuable information to help them understand that learning takes time. All right. So while creating an environment in which mistakes are accepted and understood to be part of the learning process, it's important that when correcting errors that we focus on only on a certain type of error rather than pointing out every single error that a student made in their writing assignment. For instance, I remember one of the first bits of feedback I got as an ESL teacher from the coordinator when I was telling her, like, oh my God, there's so many errors in everything they write. And she said, you know what? Just look at the common errors and then reteach that in the class. And that was good because it was really important for the student self-esteem to keep trying, right? And so when we point out every nitpick, every little thing, it's so hard for them. So exhaustive feedback on errors can overwhelm and even discourage your students. So this is what we can say instead. When you correct an error, your brain is constructing new wiring to lead you to make a better choice. Making a mistake can actually benefit you and your progress. And you can figure it out what's going on and learn from it if you persist, right? Persistence is the key. All right. So some of you may ask, what do you do when student wants you to correct every error? So what do you all do? Can you share some comments in the chat? What do you do when a student wants you to correct every error? Has this ever happened to you? Okay, so George says, I let them know that this is not as important as they think, as long as the meaning is understood. Yes, in ESL, that is a big part of the learning. Daniel says, start by generally highlighting overall concept that they did great, that they did get. Melinda says, nope, you can't learn if you don't fix it. And then Fatima says, I show them why not. Jeffrey says, I would take a step back and explain how language acquisition works when they are first learning to speak. Yes. Scott says, walk through each and every one together, demonstrating that they are important to me as their teacher. Awesome. If they want more help with ESL, I send them to our transition specialist. Students have to pass an advanced exam to get into our nursing program. Yes. And then we learn more from our mistakes. Thank you. So this is sometimes true of ESL students who think perfection is equal to fluency, right? You can answer things that like second language acquisition theory and Krashen's effective filter hypothesis do not support the correction of every area because the focus should be efficacy of communication and speaking. and with secondary focus on accuracy. Not all ESL teachers, but there will be, they will teach writing using the process approach. What the teacher should offer feedback on higher order global concerns first, such as whether the assignment fulfills the prompt, right, from the rubric, or whether there is a topic sentence in their statement and some logical support and a conclusion, or a coherent organization. Um, Mechanics and spelling, puncture, grammar, word choice, and so on. Those can be addressed in later drafts. So focus on what's important first, right? But still, rather than correcting students' writing errors, it's recommended to use editing symbols to help students better recognize the patterns of their thoughts. And um, for instance, teachers can focus on one or two errors at the time, and then with the whole class, and then come back to those, demonstrating for students to receive paper back from their teacher. So this was another thing that I learned, was using a different color pen besides red. I used to use green or purple when I was correcting my students' work because it always felt friendlier. So when you have to, give the feedback, it's likely that if you're noticing a lot of mistakes with your students' work, it's likely that the writing assignment may not have been well structured, and the process approach was not followed, or the lesson planning didn't support the students' learning. So this is also feedback for us as instructors on how we can reconfigure that assignment, for the students, that group, or for future groups. So we need to continually explain that students will learn more quickly if they focus on particular types of errors than if we address every single one at once. I mean, we can even think about our own practice as teachers, right? On our own learning experiences. So as Dweck's TED Talk explains, learners need to have realistic assessment of their own knowledge, and the way that we can support this is by providing them with clear, specific, and accurate feedback. So, what was the last piece of constructive feedback you gave to a student when he or she made an error? What did you say? How did the student respond? Did the student use the feedback successfully? Why or why not? So Daniel says, students often want to know if they achieve the maximum score when it isn't necessary to pass. Yes. It's better to focus on the areas of greater need. So let's talk about this, managing errors. So what was the last piece of constructive feedback that you gave a student when he or she made an error? What?
I'm a high school equivalency instructor, and I was giving feedback recently on a practice essay that a
Mm-hmm,
student wrote. I started off with these are the things you did well, and
mm-hmm,
then did I was sending them the feedback in an email. So I had the bullet points of this is what you did well, and then a couple bullet points. I usually keep it to the three most important things that they were missing. So I'm not overwhelming them with these are all of the things you can improve on, but I try to keep it to two or three most important things of like you missed this piece of the prompt, or
mm-hmm,
your organization of your essays of your paragraphs needs to be a little better. So I try to keep it to like two or three of the most helpful things to improve their writing.
mm-hmm.
And then students usually respond, "Wow, I did better than I thought I did."
Ah, okay, good. Yes. Good, good. Thank you so much, Heather. So in the chat, Jeffrey says, always start with the positive. Yep. And then Yvette says, you made the best decision based on the information that you had. Scott says, errors are a necessary part of growth. We learn by stumbling through. Be kind to yourself. Jacqueline says, I remind the students to remember to end with periods and start with capital letters. And they respond, oh, yes. Yes, I tell students that the CASAS test is not a pass, no pass, but more like an evaluation to see where they can use help in reading or math, yes. And that they can see that they've missed many more questions and think that they did bad on the CASAS. Yeah, the CASAS is very broad range of questions, right? Robin says mistakes are how we grow and learn. Remember that what you did right. Awesome. Thank you so much. These are great. All right. Okay, one last one. Daniel says, I can see how that was tricky. Very close to another item that was correct. To focus on nuance to help them with discerning and considering multiple choice and choose the best they can. Audrey says, I'm also thinking about comparing this to when you take your car to a mechanic. The car might have several issues, but you need to know what the most critical things are that you need to fix first and that you can afford to fix, right? Thank you, Adria. Okay, so let's take a look at another part of managing errors. So what else can we do? Another way we can help students manage errors is to focus on the strategy for solving a problem or answering a question rather than on the correct answer or the answer. Problem solving and analyzing where they went wrong are skills that students that will be able to use in other subjects and in other areas of their lives. So focusing on teaching the strategy and rewarding it, as Dweck tells us, process over product. This is very true. I can see this in other areas. All right. So challenge your students. What you can say and do. So you can tell students that what they will learn in class content is slightly above their current level rather than when it is at or below their current level. And then we really learn when we need to struggle a little with new content. We learn to persist with hard challenges by having the hard challenges, definitely. And then to differentiate the instruction, providing a more challenging version of an assignment for more advanced students and making sure that lower level students are not becoming so frustrated when they give up. So, the overall takeaway from this is to, giving our students the tools for being able to think about their errors as a learning opportunity rather than focusing on those errors for too long where they could take them off track, right? Okay, managing errors. One more. What else? You may have students. So teachers can share. You can share a personal story with students about how having a growth mindset and managing errors helped you accomplish something challenging. So emphasize how you worked hard, tried new strategies, got help, and learned from your mistakes. And yes, another way to think about it and how they look back on it. I can give you a personal anecdote from myself. I had an opportunity to take a certification exam for Microsoft applications like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and I think I passed the Word and the PowerPoint very easily, but the test that I took for Excel, I didn't pass the test, so I wasn't able to get a certification. But what it showed me is it was more of I looked at it more as a diagnostic, right? What did I still need to learn, and or the things that I knew might not have been tested in the way that I knew them, right? The test makers were looking at it from a different perspective. So, this is an example of how you can use your own, quote unquote failures or errors to encourage your students. Okay, so for the final activity of this course, you're going to write a plan for action research, which means that you will simply consider how you would conduct research on the effectiveness of any of the strategies covered today and in the next webinar. So before our next meeting, webinar 2 in week 3. That would be March the 17th. March 18th. You will read about the following the following steps of action research. So the first is to select a focus, identify a topic, and so in this case, a strategy worthy of your time. Secondly, you're going to clarify theories. So identify the values or beliefs that you have now relating to this particular topic. Then identify research questions. So formulate a set of meaningful research questions to lead your inquiry. That driving question, right? Collect the data. So then you can this step can be easily accomplished by in your classroom by observation. So any other data can include test results, class discussions, student self-assessment surveys, and questionnaires. So that's some of your data. Collecting the data. Then you analyze that data. The step doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to include statistical calculations. You as a teacher researcher, you'll notify methodically, you'll sort, you'll rank, and examine that data in order to answer 2 generic questions. What was the story and that they told, and why did the story play itself out in this way? And so finally, that would be reporting your results. Sorry, not finally. This is step 6, reporting your results. It can be done at a conference, teachers' meetings, or even during class break time. The point is to share your findings with your peers so that it will benefit your program and your students. And then last, taking informed action. This is what you probably already do on a daily basis from the information that you gather. Formal and informal, anecdotal and statistical data about your students, their needs, and their progress each time your class meets. So planning your approach. These are some things that you can consider as you plan your approach to this action research. You are going to focus on a strategy. Select a focus and research question you want to answer. Start by using the strategy as soon as possible. Then permission. Consider who you might need to inform or get permission from before you start. Then you'll collect data. So take notes on student responses and any effects on attendance and attitude, and or use the surveys or questionnaires with your students. And then finally, report. So you'll create a brief summary of your action plan, whether you will continue to use the strategy and why, and changes you will put in place if you continue to use the strategy. So this could also include recommendations that you might, consider. All right. So action research overview. So your plan will include these components: strategy, research question, what you will do, expected results, and how you will measure these effects. I'm looking for my magnifying glass because I think about a scientist who's, starting an experiment. They have a hypothesis, right? That's your research question. And then the steps that you'll take to complete that study. And then, think about your expected results and what did you actually find out. On the next 2 slides, we'll see examples of what each of these components in the assignment might look. So action research plan, here's an example. Strategy, providing choice and autonomy. Research question, does using a cohort model for independent study affect performance, attendance, and attitude? What I will do, create a pre and post test or survey for students about whether, how, and how often they study outside of class time with other students and advantages of study groups. Create study groups and let students determine the days and times that they meet, provide guidelines and content, for example, study guides. Note that increases in test scores, participation, and attendance, and then administer a post survey. So you'll be provided with a template in the Moodle so that you can use it to develop your own action research project. Here's another example. So expected results. This is a continuation, sorry. The expected results are that a 10% in student performance measured on CASAS tests for teacher or teacher-made tests, and that you also expect a 20% increase in attendance hours. These are samples, right? And then how you can measure this is comparative analysis of data with CASAS pre and post test scores, EFL, which is educational functioning level gains, attendance hours with previous class, which you didn't implement the strategy. So keep in mind, there's a template. Okay, so tell me what questions come up for you about this assignment or about our webinar today. And if you have questions that require a longer, perhaps explanation, I can respond to those, in email to the person or to everyone, or an announcement in Moodle. What questions come up for you? Okay, so our next meeting, webinar 2, is on Wednesday, March the 18th from 3 to 4 p.m. And I am looking forward to seeing you in the Moodle more. And thank you so much for your hard work today, your time and attention, and most of all, your engaged participation. I can't tell you how helpful that is, when we're keeping the conversation going. So thank you, everyone. And I'm really excited to see how many of you were able to participate today. So I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. In person and or virtually, and then in the Moodle. So have a good couple of weeks.